Welcome to Speaking of Grace, the weekly message podcast from the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida. We're a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-generational congregation committed to our mission of loving people into a lifelong friendship with God. We are committed to our vision of being a church without walls, fully engaged in serving the people of our community. Thank you for joining us as we continue Speaking of Grace.
Hello, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Ken Wetmore. It's been a while since some of you have seen me. Some of you, if you came in the last month, or who is this guy? My name's Ken, and it's my privilege to be a lead pastor here at Whole Life. And during the month of June, we had our Voices of Whole Life series where our members did the speaking. They did a fantastic job, so thank you to each person who shared from your heart during our sermon time. I enjoyed hearing them, so thank you so much. And it is really good to be back in front of you myself. So, but I have to say, I do feel a little bit nervous all on my own up here after a month of not being up front. So, Levi, would you be willing to come up and help me so I'm not all by myself for a minute? Appreciate that. Thank you, Levi. I'll take a little fist bump here. There we go. Yep, there we go. Awesome. So, Levi has been prepared. He knows that you're going to be staring at him, so it's okay. It's okay. He's going to stare at you too. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Get something to write on. I don't care if you used an app on your phone, you brought an iPad with you, you brought a laptop with you, or you just want to do that old-fashioned thing called pull out a pen and pencil and use a piece of paper. That's fine. We're going to have a little thing here where I'm going to have you list as many things as you can. Let's see who can get the most, right? But I'm only going to give you a little bit of time. So here's what you're going to do. I brought Levi up because I thought you might do well having someone that could help you as you're thinking about this. And here's what I'm going to have you do. I want you to write as many attributes of a child as you can. You can start now, but in a second, I'm going to go ahead and give you 30 seconds to write down as many attributes of a child as you can think of. We'll see who can come up with the most. Here we go. And attributes of a child, go. 30 seconds. If you need inspiration, look at Levi. Doing a good job, Levi. I can tell inspiration, you're like a muse to these people. Just doing so good. 10 seconds left. Attributes of a child. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Nice job. Thank you, Levi. You've done fantastic being up here. Yeah, give him a hand. Thank you. I feel like you're expecting something to happen. You are? You want to go back to your seat? Okay, Tag, you're right. Okay, all right, yeah, okay. All right, now you can go back. Okay. Too quick, old man. There we go. All right. So who got more than 5? Okay, awesome. Anybody get more than 10? Wow. Okay, that's really impressive because 30 seconds is not a lot of time. More than 15? Excellent. All right, well, take a look at the list that you made and let me ask you this question. How does your list match up with what you understand about what it means to be a Christian? How does your list measure up with what your understanding of a Christian is? And I ask that question because in the book of Matthew, Jesus did something similar to what I just did. In fact, I just really copied Jesus. Jesus called a child to himself, it set him among them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you change and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So whoever will humble himself like the child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." Now, undoubtedly, you've heard this passage preached on before. And usually when I preach on this passage or I hear other people preaching on this passage, we're talking about humbling yourself, having humility, or having trust as a child, right? And those are all attributes of a child. Children are humble. They're trusting of their parents and the people around them. But there's so many other things to a child, aren't there? And I wonder if sometimes we kind of miss out on all that Jesus was trying to say when he said, you need to change and become like a child. What things did you write down about a child besides being trusting and humility? What? Innocent, yes. Curious, loyal, fearless, joyful, unpredictable. Yes, very true, very true. That sounds like somebody who has small children around. Yeah. Silly. Genuine. Curious. Innocent. Excitable. There's one on my list that I really haven't heard anybody say. Playful. Playful. Yeah. Awesome. You guys are fantastic. You can swap your lists out in the lobby afterwards. But I'd like to take a moment to say that it seems to me that for whatever reason, as we grow up, we lose these childlike qualities. And one of the qualities that we really tend to lose, I think, is that idea of playfulness. Even in the animal kingdom, we can see this. So we were on a whole life family vacation in Kenya, went on safari, and we saw this herd of elephants that are right behind me crossing this river. And if you look very carefully, there is a submerged elephant right here. It happens to be a baby elephant. He or she is just having the time of their life in the water and does not want to get out. Does not want to get out. Now, look at what happens. I don't know if this mom auntie, they're like, come along and poke him, go, get out. And he's like, I don't want to do it. Isn't it interesting that even for those of you who have pets, you know when you have pets, they're playful when they're small. When they're kittens or puppies, they're super playful. And it seems like as adults, we tend to kind of grow up and kind of grow out of this idea of play. In fact, when you look at the dictionary definition of play, it actually says especially by children when it's defining play. Activities engaged in for enjoyment and recreation, especially by children. Engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than a serious or practical purpose. So let me ask you a question. Is that just like, is play just for kids then? Is it something that we just need to grow up and get serious finally? We need to grow up and get rid of play and just mature into what God really wants us to be, which is serious, hardworking, productive, boring people. Somebody said, there we go. Yeah, that works. That works. I want to suggest to you that I don't think so, and that's why I'm doing this series over the summer called The Family That Plays Together, because I really genuinely believe that play is not something that we outgrow. We may mature in how we play, but I don't think it's something God ever intended us to outgrow and to take out of our lives. One of the foremost experts on play is a guy by the name of Stuart Brown. He's the founder and president of the National Institute for Play. Now, the reason I know about Stuart Brown is because my wife is an educator, and she's a specialist in early childhood education. And one of the things that she's become convinced of over the years is that we are actually kind of hurting our children sometimes in the way that we go about doing education. Because a lot of times, especially maybe when I was growing up as a child and before then especially, and even to a certain extent today, a lot of educational settings take play out of education. It's work, 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 do this homework, get this done. And we start doing this to kids at 3 and 4 years of age. And Stuart Brown is going to here to tell you that if your child isn't playing when they're learning, they're not getting the best education they can get. Because play actually helps kids learn. It actually it's what that baby elephant is learning when it's playing. And when we watch the cheetah cubs that we saw on the safari playing with their mom and with each other, they were learning important things, although they did not know that they were learning. They just thought they were playing. And today, it's the same thing with ourselves. We are living in a country and a culture where there is play, but sometimes we kind of tend to downgrade it, especially within Christian circles, I find. We start feeling really uncomfortable when we start talking about playing a lot, because we have this kind of ethic of God's serious, we need to be serious, Jesus is coming soon, get to work, get the work done, right? We don't have time for play. Well, let me go ahead and talk to you about what Stuart Brown says are the attributes of play. And as you're thinking about it, ask yourself if these are attributes that might be worthwhile, even if Jesus is coming soon. Okay? Which I believe he is. So, Stuart Brown's list of properties of play are this. Number one, apparently purposeless. In other words, it's just done for its own sake. Apparently purposeless. Now, I think one of the operative words to pay attention to is the word apparently. Because oftentimes play has very important purposes. I remember going and seeing my grandmother, my grandma lives all by herself up in the mountains of Virginia. She's 98 years old, still taking care of herself. I remember going and visiting her maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I said, "Grandma, you got a laptop?" She said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, what are you doing with it?" Well, and she listed off, I'm on the Facebook, but she said, "I also like to play games that keep my brain sharp." She said, I want to play these games that'll help me stay sharp. And I was looking at the games, and they were, the kind of games that you have to think, but she was enjoying it. It appeared apparently purposeless, but it wasn't. There was a point for it. So another thing about a property of play is that it's voluntary. In other words, if I tell you, you have to do this, it's probably not play anymore, right? If I say you're going to do this. It's like one of the things that we do here at Whole Life is that we take our staff and their families on a little mini vacation once a year. And one of the things I tell our staff when we go is that everything that we do is voluntary. I'm going to be down playing games in the evening, but if you and your family don't want to do it, you don't need to do it. Because the second that I say you have to go play games with me, it quits being playtime as a family and it starts being work time. Well, Ken said I have to be there, so here I am to do what I'm supposed to do. So play has to be voluntary. Another property of it is that it has inherent attraction. In other words, I want to do this. This is something I'm interested in. If you don't want to do it, it quits being play, right? It's like this is a chore. This is something that I have to do. But another aspect of that play is that inherent attraction. The other thing that you'll notice when you're really engaging in play is that you lose track of time. Suddenly time just kind of, it's the reason why vacations go so fast, right? You lose track of time. When you're having a good time, the time just flies by. For instance, we did a walking tour of Savannah recently with some friends. For some people, it was forever. For me, it was done really quick. I was having a good time. It was play for me, not play for some of my other friends because it was like work and walking and hot. But I was fascinating because it was history and interesting, and I'm playing. I'm having a good time, so that's why we did it. There we go. Anyway, so you lose track of time. The next thing is diminished consciousness of self. When you're playing, you kind of forget about how you look. And as adults, maybe that's one of the reasons that we shy away from play. Because when you lose track of how you feel, you can look silly. You can look foolish, even. But when you're playing, you don't care because you're having a good time. And it doesn't really matter. You're not thinking about, do I look, distinguished, and do I look like the lead pastor of a very important church called Whole Life Church? You're just having a good time. Another part of play is that it gives you the opportunity to improvise. In other words, when you're really playing, a lot of times the rules are flexible. And if you don't believe me, watch kids playing. Right? Everything's flexible. I mean, my mom was very much against my brother and I having guns of any kind, like toy guns, anything like that. So we figured out how to make the headlights on our Matchbox cars guns that shot at each other. Improvisational. We improvise. Mom, you can say we can't, but we're going to improvise in our play to figure out how to do what we want to do. And we see that in kids, and really in adults, when you're really playing, there's improvisation in there that you can do. The final aspect of play is that there is the idea that I just like to keep doing this. I'd like to go back and do it. It's one of the things that there is a certain game that I love to play. And every time we have a staff retreat, I beg everybody, can we please just do at least one, maybe two, okay, a whole evening of this particular game. I love it. I'm not going to say it. I said it during first service. You can go watch first service if you want to, but I got too much judgment for the game, so I'm not going to say it during second service. It is a great game, though. I'll just leave it there. So, no, sorry. You have to watch first service if you want to watch it. So Stuart Brown says this about play. He says the ability to play is critical not only to being happy, but also to sustaining social relationships and being a creative and innovative person. Now, on first blush, you're going to say, well, if I'm an accountant, do I really want to be creative? That might not be a good thing. But I would suggest that all of us, no matter what our profession, benefit when we're creative and innovative. Creative doesn't mean that you cheat. It means you think about how to do things within the framework, how to innovate. And so I think all of us would do better if we played more. It increases our happiness, and it makes us more innovative and creative. But there are other benefits, and this is a list that, after doing all the research I did from Stuart Brown and a bunch of other websites and books that I read through, these are some of the benefits, and there are way more than this, but here's 5 benefits to taking time to play. The first one is that it boosts your overall sense of well-being. People who find regular time to play and make it a part of their schedule in the same way that they would make work or any other activity a part of their schedule, people find regular time to play, find that their overall well-being is just better. The second thing is it helps us cope with stress. I remember one of the most stressful jobs I ever had was running a summer camp. So to all my summer camp friends out there running summer camps, love you, praying for you, good luck. Stressful job. Why? Because most of your staff are between the ages of 16 and 23, and they're supervising kids between the ages of 7 and 16. What could go wrong? I won't even go there. You should absolutely send your kids to camp, by the way. I really, truly believe this. I sent my kids to camp and prayed a lot. And I was running the camp, so there you go. But I remember one particularly stressful evening. My hours at summer camp, I'd usually wake up somewhere between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, and then I would work till at least 11, between 11 and 1 a.m. most days. That's summer camp. And you can imagine working that much that you tend to start getting stressed, especially when you have people doing stressful things. And this one particular evening, I was so stressed out, and I was kind of in a bad place. I was spinning my wheels. I really wasn't being very productive. And the assistant director, without saying anything, got up. He went to our closet of toys, and he grabbed 2 big super soakers. And he filled them up, and he handed one to me, and he took the other one, and he said, come on. And I said, we've got too much to do right now. He's like, we need to do this. Let's go. So we go out. We get into a golf cart, and he said, all the counselors are out on the front porch of their cabins right now because they put their kids to bed, and they're kind of trying to talk to each other across the space. Let's do a drive-by. So much fun. It relieved the stress. I was able to go back, finish up what I needed to do in a way that I don't think I would have been able to do had I not just gone and had some fun, played, because play relieves stress. Play also boosts our physical health. Oftentimes there's an aspect of physicality to play. It's exercise, but you don't really recognize it as exercise because you're having a good time. But even if it's not exercise, when you're playing, it also sets off endorphins and other really amazing things in your body that send great things into your body that helps your body be more physically healthy. The fourth thing it does is play promotes culture. The way that people play together tells you a lot about the way that they view things. What is culture? I always define culture as the way we do things around here. That's culture is not necessarily right or wrong. Sometimes it can be right or wrong, but most of the time, it's just the way that we prefer to do things around here. And when you play, you send out messages about the way we do things around here. It creates a culture. It's one of the reasons why I said I take our staff on a little family vacation every year. It's not because I wanted to waste money. It's because I wanted to create a group of people that love each other, care for each other, and understand what we're here about. It's also a way to say to the families of the people who work here, man, I get that you sacrifice to support this person who's doing great things at this church. Thank you. Promotes culture. Play promotes culture. Play also creates and deepens relationships. When you play together, you get to know somebody in a different way. Have you ever been with somebody that you've worked with, and then you go do something and you're like, I had no idea. Had no idea. I remember one of my bosses that I had in news. I thought she was the toughest, meanest, nastiest person. And I say that in all the nicest possible ways. She was a hard worker. But she was hard. And I remember going out and hearing her. It was the first week, and she said to me, Ken, we work hard here and we play hard here. And I remember we worked hard during the week, and that first weekend she invited me with a bunch of other colleagues to go out and play. I saw a whole different side. And when I went back to work the next Monday, it changed the way that I interacted with her and the way that I saw her. I still worked hard for her, but there was this deeper relationship with her that really made a difference. So these are just a few of the things. You could probably think of more. You can email me with them if you want. But I just want to give you 5 things that I think. So let's talk about this for a second. So when was the last time that you heard a series of sermons on play in church? Recently? I don't know about you, but this is the first time I've ever done a series of sermons on play. And as I think back over the times that I've been in different places, I've never heard, I can't honestly think about a single sermon I've heard on play, much less a series of sermons on it. So why is that? Well, I think it's because of this little word right here. For a long time, theologians have really kind of discussed what is the balance. And this is the Greek word for this idea of the balance between play and work. Duty, service. And what we've seen through the years is that Christians tend to really like to gravitate towards work and duty, right? It's like when you get in with some old-time Christians, they'll say, well, the work must be done. You never hear them say the play must be done, but the work must be done. You know, the work. And I don't want to diminish work. We're going to do a whole series on that after this. Work is a beautiful thing, God-given, God-blessed. And so is play. Play also. So where is the balance and how do we find it? Well, a lot of theologians have talked to it through the years. Everybody from C.S. Lewis, who may be very familiar to some of you, to G.K. Chesterton, Hugh Rayner, and then one of the early theologians of the Christian church, a guy named Thomas Aquinas, said this: we need to play. For as our bodies cooperate in the activities of the soul, we are revitalized to feel alive. Thomas understood, early theologian of the church, understood that play had a place, that it had a place in a Christian's life, that it wasn't some, it's interesting to me that oftentimes when we talk about religious things, we talk about work. When we talk about secular things, we talk about play, as if play can't be religious, and as if work can't be secular. It's something that I think we really ought to think about when it comes to what it means to really play and to appreciate things. And maybe one of the reasons that we struggle with play is because the Bible isn't particularly explicit about it, right? If I told you to go to BibleGateway.com, great website that has a bunch of different versions of the Bible, and you type the word play into the search bar, you hit enter, I think the first one that you're going to see is that Israel played the harlot. And so, not exactly, a great endorsement of play right off the bat, right? So you're like, okay, and if you really look through at all the different places where play is mentioned in the Bible, the word play itself doesn't really particularly show up in a big way. And so that's where I suggest that maybe this is one of those times where God expects us to maybe think a little bit more. And I want you to think, is there play in the Bible? I think there is. I think it shows up right in Genesis 1 and 2. You see a creative God creating things, bringing order out of chaos. You say, well, Ken, he was working because he ceased on the seventh day from all his work. Is it possible to introduce play into work? I think it is. I think it is. And God, I think, is a playful God. Check this out. Psalms 104, 25 through 26. Here's the ocean, vast and wide, teeming with life of every kind, both large and small. See the ships sailing along. And Leviathan, which you created, he said made, which you created to play in the sea. And that word play means exactly what you think it means. It means to play, to splash, to have a good time. So God created the whales. He created the ocean life to play. Is it possible he also created you and I to play in our environment as well? I think it is. I think it's there. And I think that when you look at the Garden of Eden, you see that God gives them this opportunity to really enjoy this garden. He gives them work to do, but that work's not difficult. It's fun. It's enjoyable. In fact, the only time that work becomes unenjoyable is after sin is introduced. That's when God says that work suddenly becomes by the sweat of your brow. Before that, it wasn't. And so right from the beginning, I believe that God introduced play and enjoyment. I believe that rest and play are two different words, and yet they are interrelated in some ways, that we get rest through play, and that play is an aspect of rest. And what was that God gave us on the seventh day? Rest. I wonder if maybe it wouldn't be inappropriate for us. I wonder how much more our children might enjoy Sabbaths if we played together instead of lumping work and play together. I'm not saying that there's bad kinds of work. There are bad kinds of work. There are bad kinds of play. There are good kinds of play. There are good kinds of work. But sometimes we just lump it all into one thing and say, oh, play, that's bad. Don't do that on Sabbath. And then do our children find the Sabbath to be a delight? I know a lot of kids that will tell you that they didn't find it to be a delight because there wasn't a lot to delight in. Psalm 16, verse 11, you will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. When I think about play, I think about joy. God talks about us giving us joy. And in John 10:10, Jesus says this, the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them work. No, it says to give them a rich and satisfying life. That can be work. Work can be rich and satisfying. Absolutely. And play can help it be that. I believe that Jesus came to do that. And when you look at Jesus' life, I know we love to focus on the man of sorrows acquainted with grief, and we love to say that Jesus wept, and we focus on these aspects of things, and yet the Jesus that I see in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is playful. It's there if you look for it and you see it. It's in his first miracle being at a wedding. A miracle, by the way, that created play. I know as Seventh-day Adventists, we love to go ahead and erase all the words dance out of the Bible, but it's there. It's there. And again, appropriate, inappropriate, but let's go ahead and just say, at the Red Sea, there was some dancing, some singing. Play. Again, read between the lines and there it is. A lot of times I think that some of our culture in the United States comes down to culture as opposed to biblical reality. We come, the United States religiously, when we think about how we do things religiously, a lot of it comes down to us from the Puritans that settled here in the United States. And they had a work ethic. They were like, all work, all the time, play, be serious, get to work. And I think that's filtered into our religious life a lot. And yet, there must be a balance because the Bible tells me in Ecclesiastes that there is a time for everything. A time to work and a time to play. By the way, do you know what Stuart Brown says the opposite of play is? It's not work. Stuart Brown says the opposite of work or of play is depression. I'll say it again. The opposite of play is not work, it's depression. And Jesus came to give us a rich and satisfying life, not depression. Ellen White, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and just a great all-around person, who I believe God inspired, said this: "Let us never lose sight of the fact that Jesus is a wellspring of joy. He does not delight in the misery of human beings, but loves to see them happy." I love that. So, family, I wonder if you'd be willing to play a little bit this summer. You open to it? I'd love to invite you to come play when we go ice skating tomorrow. It's free, so there's no reason you can't do it. Just have to get yourself to RDV. Randy will come by on his motorcycle and pick you up. RDV, tomorrow ice skating. Then the week after that, we're going to have improv night on Wednesday night. We've invited SAC Comedy Lab to come here and do improv for us. Invite your friends. I'd love to see this place filled up. They asked me how many people to expect. I said, I have no idea. But I'd love for you to invite your neighbors and friends. It's going to be a great evening. They're fantastic. It's going to be fun. It's going to be family friendly. It's going to be great. We're also going to have a food truck here so you can come and eat together. That's part of play, in my opinion. Another thing that we're going to do is have hobbies and ice cream night. If you have a hobby that you'd like to showcase, we'd love to see it. I already have people who are going to do some quilting, sewing. I've got people who are going to talk about a maker's club. There's a bunch of things, but if you have, maybe you collect stamps or coins or, I don't know, rocks, whatever, send me an email, ken@wholelife.church. I'd love to set up a table for you so you can showcase it. You know, I've noticed through the years that as I've seen other people go, oh, I like that. I'd like to try that out. Or I'm kind of into that, but I didn't know anybody else was. I'd love to kind of get together and we can kind of share ideas. So that's kind of the idea of what we're going to do. On that night, we're also going to invite you to bring your favorite ice cream with you. And we're going to have an ice cream potluck. It's going to be awesome. Brain freeze. Anyways, it's going to be such a good time. We're going to have such a good time. And by the way, I've thought this out. Ice cream's going to be on the 3rd floor. We will be by the doors checking that you've washed your hands before you head down to play games and look at the hobbies. So we've thought this through a little bit, okay? Because ice cream hands and hobbies not always a good combo. So anyway, but we're going to have such a good time doing this. I hope you'll be a part of that. And then we also wanted to go ahead and give you parents a chance to go out yourselves. I know my kids are kind of grown. My youngest is headed to college this year. And so Rochelle and I are fortunate enough now to be able to kind of go out on date night kind of almost whenever we want. But I remember when those kids were little, what it was like to just to get a couple hours together. And we want to give you parents that chance to do that. And so thanks to Aubrey and her team, we're going to create that. There is a sign up for that. And it's really important to us that we keep your kids safe, that we have the right amount of help there to make sure that your kids are well taken care of. And that's why we're asking for the registration, just simply because we want to make sure we have the right amount of help for your kids. And so if you would register, that would, that would mean that your kids could come. So go ahead and make sure that you're registered. We appreciate that. And then we're going to close off with a Great Lake Day together. So what do you think, family? Can we play together? All right. Well, I genuinely believe that the family that plays together, stays together, prays together, and has an amazing life together.
We had a great chat while you were delivering your message, and there's just one question that stands out to me, and I want to ask you.
Yeah.
It says, many church leaders may hear this sermon and fear that highlighting humor and playfulness of God is dangerous. Why do we fear those attributes of God more than overplaying God's sovereignty and seriousness?
Wow. Firstly, I think it does seem like there is a fear. I think probably the fear comes that if you're playing, maybe you're not going to be productive. Maybe you're going to get into some of what Paul talks about, foolish talk. And so I think that instead of looking for the balance, we tend to always veer towards an edge. We tend to be like, so I make sure I don't do this, I'll move all the way over to here. instead of following down the middle of the road and finding the balance that I believe God has for us. Because, like I mentioned in Ecclesiastes earlier, there's a time for everything. And I think part of the Christian life is not moving away from things, it's understanding when the right time is. And part of learning when the right time is, as you see with kids, is a process of discovery. You're going to make mistakes. And I think for whatever reason, I think that oftentimes Christians are very afraid of failing. I think that maybe it comes from a fear that if I fail and then get hit by a bus the next day, God has taken away my salvation, which I don't think is a good theology. Right. I think that God understands that we have moments where we're learning, where we make mistakes, and where we have to pick ourselves up and dust ourselves and let's try again. Not everything we do here at Whole Life is perfect, and we make mistakes and we learn from them. And the same thing I think is true, hopefully, in each one of your personal life. Find that balance. Workaholism is not a virtue. It's destructive, it kills families, and it shouldn't be celebrated the way that it is in the Christian church. A person who plays too much and doesn't take care of their family and they are rightfully held accountable. They should be. And the same thing should be true with workaholism. When people spend no time with their kids, their spouse, when they think that the end of everything is creating a career for themselves, they've missed out on some of the beautiful gifts, most important gifts that God's given us: family, community, and selflessness. Right. And so I think that tends to, for whatever reason, as a church, we feel much more comfortable with people being workaholics than playing too much. So again, I think finding that middle balance is what's important. And so I just hope that each person here today, as you think about the amount of play you have in your life, I don't think one size fits all. I think that some of us need more or less, different kinds. So just go home and think about where's play working in my life? How am I making it part of my life? Am I getting enough? Am I getting too much? How can I find that balance?
Well, I'm learning myself how to find that balance. I was at work yesterday, and I found out that I have a future Olympian in my family. My daughter sent me a video of her swimming, and she says, "I'm swimming because I saw the Ledecky, and I'm going to be from Florida just like her, and watch what I can do." And she just jumped in, and it's like, I can't believe I'm missing this, but at the same time, like you were saying, there has to be that balance.
There's the balance. There is. Yeah.
So, am I doing something right or wrong?
That's between you and God. We can talk about it between ourselves some other time, right? Well, maybe not in front of all of our friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm an open book. It really doesn't matter to me.
I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, we are, Ken. Any other questions that may come in online, or if you guys have any questions, make sure you send them to Randy, and then Ken's going to try to answer them on the podcast.
It won't be just me. Melanie, Randy, myself, we have a great time on Tuesdays, and then the podcast drops on Wednesday mornings.
Awesome. I'll be listening to you guys on my way to work.
Awesome.
All right.
Hi, this is Randy McGray, podcast producer and host here at Whole Life Church. Loving people into a lifelong friendship with God is our mission at the Whole Life Church, and our podcasts are designed to help facilitate conversations that help us grow together in that pursuit. Now that you've heard the message for this week, don't forget to check out the Whole Life takeaways for this message. Swipe up in today's show notes and join the conversation. Speaking of conversations, each Wednesday morning we take a closer look at the week's message. That's right, the one you just listened to. We discuss practical ways to apply spiritual lessons and ask honest questions about the issues we face as Christians, all focused through the lens of grace. Your voice is a welcomed addition to that conversation. We encourage your thoughts and your questions by sending a voicemail or text to 407-965-1607 or send an email to podcast@wholelife.church. You can find everything podcast related on our website, wholelife.church/podcast. And plan on spending every Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning with us as we bring you the Whole Life Church inspiration you love straight into your headphones. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.